Howdy there, folks and cowpokes, and today we have episode 27 of the Sorta podcast. And I am joined once again by the inimitable Dan,
Bonjour, bonjour, listeners.
and
It's
also.
another episode.
Oh, sorry.
No, I just said it's another episode. I thought I'd like stretch it a bit, but it kind of died out when I said it's another episode. Just like been
Yeah,
doing this like 27 times already, Melody. Like I don't know if I have it in me.
yeah, we've recorded all these in the same day. Um, so, uh, we have a special guest this time, by the name of construction going on in the background, which may get picked up on the microphone. So that'll be fun. Um, so also let's get the Star PG soundtrack going on in the background, so that hopefully we don't have to worry about that as much. But
Yes, RPG, the only music that we have on this channel.
the only music that Dan and I listen to, um,
Yeah,
there's no other music.
there is no other music.
Do not listen to any of the liars, the heretics who would say otherwise. Um, so we shall be embarking on a once in a lifetime. I was trying to weasel that in to the segue. Um, in our once in
It's
future
close. It's close.
journey into
There you
once in
go.
future, um,
Hey,
which is a comic published by Boom Studios by Kieran Gillen, Dan Mora, Tamara Bonvillain, and Clayton Cowles, I believe, is the letterer on that. So
only
Dan,
I get that moment. Yeah.
uh, we have both read a little bit of Once in Future. You have not, because you are of weak moral character, but I have. So, as you can see, dear viewers, the art in this series is phenomenal. Of course it is. It's by Dan Mora and Tamara Bonvillain.
What else have they worked on, Melody?
Well, Dan Mora has worked on Shazam, the Go-Go Power Rangers series, I think. Might have been Mighty Morphing Power Rangers. I don't remember. I think it's Go-Go, because that was the spin-off. He's also done art on World's Finest at DC. Klaus with Grant Morrison. Tamara
Oh, he did
Bonvillain.
Klaus.
Yeah, Klaus.
Okay. Cool.
I'm hoping not to show any major spoilers for this with the covers. Dear viewers.
Remember covers spoiling anything, but I only read like the first arc.
Yeah,
But
exactly. You haven't looked at
yeah,
the arc 27. Well, issue 27.
issue
They
27.
didn't
Yeah.
get that long into it.
How,
This
how how long is the series?
35 issues.
Okay,
Could be finished in
about
like
as long
4
as
hours.
a few superhero runs of like some of the newer superhero runs.
Most of those don't even get to 35.
I mean, like almost all the DC Rebirth ones went for around 40, didn't they?
Yeah, but those were the Rebirth ones. That was like 3 years ago. Some of those ended.
Odd, but like to me that's modern MJ. You know, like that's
There's been at least like 2 or 3 for most of those. If not, they just got outright canceled. Like Aquaman. Aquaman hasn't had a series in like 2 or 3 years, I think.
yeah. I'm really happy Deathstroke hasn't had a series because I really like how Priest ended his. But
Yeah, good.
yeah,
Focus,
Yeah,
Stan.
go on.
Once in
Go on. Yeah,
focus.
what's the future? What's the fuck's sake? Let's go.
So this is a phenomenal series. No, do not show me their comic review. I want to see the art
Do.
full. I'm trying to show the promo art so that's, people
This is
can
the
get a
problem
feel.
when you do like impromptu podcast viewers. Like you
Yeah,
don't have like some other resource person who may or may not be called Jamie to pull up these images for us. Nope, do it all
this.
ourselves. The Melody does it all herself, and yeah,
Yeah,
this
exactly.
is the
You do
result.
nothing. You have done
I do.
nothing. You have contributed nothing to this shit. No. Um. So, yeah, the art in the series phenomenal. The colorist Tamara Bonvillain, who for some reason is not credited in this promotional page, nor is Clayton Cowles. More like Clayton Cowards making the credits on this. Credit your letters everywhere because lettering is what makes it a comic book instead of,
A picture book. Yeah.
Well, you can actually have comics with just art, but that's what changes it from being a script.
Yeah, like if it's
on the
scripted
side.
comic. Yeah, exactly.
Like, could you imagine having to read a comic and then having to have the script on the side?
Or can you imagine like reading porn comics and just like having Comic Sans typed letters for every speech bubble?
No, I cannot imagine that.
Either can I. I don't know why I brought it up. Go on.
Why would I ever imagine that?
Let's move on, Melody. What's the future? What's the future? Let's...
Once in more like Dunson future, Dan. I've hit you with the Duns card twice today. So, yeah, this is. Let's actually start talking about the comic.
That would be a good idea.
So, this is a series which is set in like an urban fantasy UK. It's all about like Arthurian legends and shit, at least at first. And essentially it's like these white nationalists are, trying to bring back King Arthur, but King Arthur is like actual King Arthur who would have been like trying to kill all like fucking Normans and shit and Anglo-Saxons. He was trying to kill the Saxons because the Saxons are not actually part of his UK.
Exactly. So, like, I mean, is that a bit of a spoiler for the first arc?
No.
But I mean, it's revealed
It's
at
the core
literal
premise.
end of the first issue. Yeah.
It's the core premise of the series.
Yeah. So, it's a cool twist on the Arthurian legend because it's such a quintessentially English legend. It's a British legend. But then when the British white nationalists show up to like resurrect Arthur, there's an immediate disconnect because there's a slow realization that Arthur never served the English as we know it today. He would have had a very, very different a racial image in mind, and that was like a quite interesting twist on it. Arthur is like almost portrayed as like, which is probably more in line with history. He's more portrayed as a colonial marauder in a sense. Yeah. It's quite cool. It's a very cool concept of hinge an urban fantasy story on, especially the Arthurian legend's been told so many times. It was one of the most popular public domain stories out there, and to see that twist on it is quite interesting.
Also, not to circle back around to the whole is it a spoiler, but the cover of the first issue in the first volume is King Arthur, and he does not look friendly, does he? Um, you know, I believe he is a good guy. He's one of the goodies.
I mean, for all I know, he does become one of the goodies by the end of the story. I've
Oh
only
yeah,
read the
he
first
does.
part.
It's an
Yes.
enemy. It's an enemies to lovers arc. He
Hey.
he he, starts dating Fuck, I've
Main
forgotten
character.
his name. It's a
The Percy.
Dom
Percy.
Dom. I was gonna circle around and start calling him Dan. Um,
And me dating King Arthur, maybe. Question is, would I date
he
this King Arthur?
he's
I guess
trying to
we'll see
move up in the world, dear viewers.
how-
But yeah, basically you have this like himbo archaeology scholar and his monster hunting grandma.
Yep.
And they're going after King Arthur and the White Nationalists, and then they're killing them.
Yeah, it's genre to a T. It's not. It is deconstructionist in like the premise, but like the execution is quite. At least the first arc, it's straight on. At least that's how I felt.
Yeah, it is very deconstructionist overall. It's very much about myth and legend and myth and legend. And
But like, don't you think it is like very very focused on like hitting the genre tropes as well? Like, there is a lot of
yes,
action, a
but
lot of violence.
metatextually.
The himbo does become like proficient at fighting quite quickly. It's not even a
Yes,
spoiler. Yeah, so
because he's falling into his tropes, the tropes of the story. That's kind of like the whole premise of it is like, are we destined to just be what the stories tell us to be, kind of thing? Or can we change the stories and mold them in our own ways to serve our purposes and all that good stuff?
Yep.
And then people are serving like multiple roles, and that kind of fucks them up a little bit because it's like you are simultaneously someone who needs to die to a dragon, but also someone who needs to befriend a dragon, or like the just a hypothetical that doesn't actually happen. That kind of thing, where it's like, oh,
yeah.
so I don't know which dragon. If I just go up and meet the first dragon, is that gonna be the one that just fucking kills me? Or can it not kill me because I have to fit both qualification? That kind of shit.
Yeah, there's plenty of fun stuff. Speaking of fun stuff, one small thing I did take umbrage with was the comedy. I think it took far too many like comedic swings for no. I think it fucked with the tone a bit personally, but the thing is, comic books in general are like usually have lighter tones than like their equivalent in novels or in films and that kind of thing.
I think
So it could just be a medium thing.
I think it's more you only read the first arc, which is more lighthearted, and then over time it becomes more serious.
Oh, okay.
So it's basically like trying to warm you up to it, trying to like, oh, it's kind of like fun and lighthearted, and then over time it slowly but surely introduces more twists, more like complexity to it, and then once you actually get to the end, it's like, okay, this is like a big epic, Like there's still like wit to it, but it's not funny. Strictly speaking.
It's not like going for the laughs that it was in the first arc.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the first arc is kind of like you buy the ridiculous like fantasy type shit if you're not a fantasy nerd more easily if it's introduced you like in a fun kind of like snarky kind of way, like, but not in a like, oh wow, like eye roll kind of way. It's more like, yeah, dumbass,
I
like
don't know. Like it is a
werewolf.
bit eye rolly, honestly. Like
Not
the personally, I found like the complete himboification of the main character. And like the entire grandma's like, "Oh, you just keep believing them myths, boy," and it goes on for a bit. Like almost every 2 pages, you get like a gag like that. It's just like, oh god. But
not that much. There's a lot of pages where it's just like, oh my god, this is a fucking gorgeous like castle
oh yeah, they have like some
dream
amazing
castle.
splash pages, don't they? That's true.
Not even
Like
just splash pages.
it's
There's
not just splash pages, but like the usage of space throughout the comic, right? I think that's something to like be merited. Like they're paced incredibly well.
yeah, it's like, it's a gorgeous comic. Like Dan Mora, Tamara Bonvillain. I'm not sure. I've only read it. Her name.
Mhm.
But like I also love like the facial expressions of him when he's like he sees his grandma's like fucking weapon stash, and
Oh yeah.
then there's
Oh, the best line in the series, yeah.
what the hell
Oh
is
yeah.
this? Put it down. We don't need it. What is it for? Well, I used to hunt vampires. You used to hunt vampires? Yes, I used to. Then I ran out of vampires. And then she goes back to fucking messing with
What a
her shit.
line.
She's such a fun character. In terms of my qualms with it slightly, I feel that the ending of the series is slightly like a little bit like it's one of those ones where they leave the door a little bit open for
Yeah.
continuations, and it's like I'm always going to have some. I mean, I'm an astounding Wolfman fan. um, like I know the perils of leaving the door just a little bit open.
Yeah. You don't want a cash grab sequel to Once and Future, do you?
No, but do you want to? Who wants a cash grab sequel to anything?
Well,
Aren't
that's what
those?
I want to talk about, Melody, because cash grab sequels are an inherently terrible idea. It's art as capital, it's art as commerce. It's taking something that was once unique and did something in an interesting way and saying, okay, how can we make money off this? That's all like one of these sequels are. They're not done for like story progression. They're just done to make a quick buck, right? However, there are three very, very interesting films that I watched recently that kind of deal with the idea of cash grab sequel in very fun ways, and they only work because they don't have any narrative responsibility to continue with the issues presented in the first stuff, in the first film or franchise or whatever it is. And so questions first for Melody. Have you seen Godfather Part 3?
No, I have not seen a single Godfather movie.
Okay. Have you seen you've seen Love, Death and Robots, right?
Yes.
Like all the shows, but you haven't seen the heavy metal films,
No.
like the animated ones for that, and you haven't seen American Graffiti.
No.
Okay.
I am uncultured.
So, that's all right. That's all right because it lets me ramble on for a few minutes. So, let's start with American Graffiti. It's the film that put George Lucas on the map before the film that would take up his entire life afterwards. So, American Graffiti is a very, very simple story about a few kids interacting in 60s America just before the big economic recession started to happen, and like when everyone was having like some money in their pockets. It was a good time. And what the sequel does is it takes most of those characters and takes a side character and upgrades her to a protagonist status, and puts them in 4 different timelines, and shoots them in 4 different formats in so aspect ratio, so the screen size changes for each one of them, and intercuts them all. And so you have 4 completely different films that have next to nothing to do with each other in different decades happening at the same time. It's still a narrative continuation from American Graffiti. It's like a prequel / sequel, and that kind of thing. But the reason George Lucas, who only wrote and produced this apparently, but also ghost directed at least one of the segments, because apparently he does that in a lot of his things in Star Wars. But what this allows the director to do is he's allowed to go completely unhinged, and he's allowed to do all this very far-reaching, dramatic storytelling, which American Graffiti didn't really try to do. It's more of a mood piece. It's more of a feel-good film, and honestly, I think it works brilliantly for it. I think by freeing itself from American Graffiti structure, it allows itself to tell stories about the time periods rather than just be in them. And I think, even though it was very cynically made just to cash in on American Graffiti's popularity, in my opinion, it surpasses American Graffiti as an artistic achievement. And yeah, just a lot of fun. It also ends on with 2 successive needle drops of what's that Simon and Garfunkel song that everyone likes? Sound of Silence. It ends with Sound of Silence, and then immediately transitions to Like a Rolling Stone, and it's just yeah, okay, this is good.
Excuse me, Dan. The Sound of Silence is a Disturbed song. Simon and Garfinkel, they only covered that from the
Disturbed original, yeah.
The Disturbed, yeah.
Sorry. Thank you for that editorial note, Melody.
Yeah. Do you think Simon and Garfinkel had the artistic merit to have the domestic abuse breakdown? No, they did not. Oh, wow! You can't make that shit up.
So speaking of Simon Garfunkel, okay, the next one has nothing to do with Simon Garfunkel. Heavy metal is.
Speaking of Disturbed.
Oh yeah, this is true. I think I thought I heard a Disturbed song in Heavy Metal 2000, but apparently it was some other indie band. But anyway, heavy metal is a comic book that was pretty popular back in the day, and I think, Melody, correct me if I'm wrong, is still in print now, but
yes.
in less
barely
numbers. Yeah, just about.
Also, it's based off of Metal Hurlant, which is a French comic. Oh, we cannot show that on television. That trailer. I should have known.
Headbangers in Leather, Melody. But yeah. So it's basically the stereotypical answer of what is heavy metal, or the entire idea behind it is, it's every 12-year-old boy living in the 80s, their wet dreams. It's just a ton of blood, guts, naked women for the sake of naked women, etc., etc. A better answer would be just edgy animation that was skewed very directly against the mainstream animation coming at that time. You have to remember this, in the 80s and 70s, the anime wasn't really as big as it is now in America. So the idea of adult animation was pretty much just pornography, and even that was quite limited. So to have any kind of quote-unquote serious animation for adults was to be lauded. And you had people like Ralph Bakshi and some other animators trying to do this, but probably the most commercially successful and more resonant of those things was heavy metal. It was a film in 1982, I want to say. I think Melody probably has the number on it.
81.
Thing 81, yeah. And it was great. It has one of the most enduring film soundtracks of the 80s. I mean, I'm sure Melody knows like a few of the songs from the soundtrack. Do you know like Sammy Hagar's heavy metal song?
No, why would I know that? I don't listen to Sammy Hagar. Sammy
You don't know
Hagar.
like that song? It's your one way ticket to midnight, calling heavy metal. I don't know that song. Anyway, maybe just me, but great film. Heavy metal is fantastic. It is. There's so much passion behind every frame. It's incredibly stupid. It's most of it doesn't work as a story. Like it is just a ton of naked women and like fighting and stuff like that. But it is genuinely cool to look at. The music propels it incredibly well, and the final section is an actual story. It's the story of Tana, in which she fights like some weird lizard people, and she flies into a volcano at the end. It's fucking great. Heavy metal classic. So 20 years later, to get on the 2000 boom that like a lot of old properties and franchises were trying to do,
Fantasia
they decided
2000.
Fantasia 2000, like everything at its fucking 2000.
Dracula
But
2000.
yeah, so heavy metal thought they'd do it as well, but they chose like a small studio in either I'm pretty sure it's like a small Canadian studio with like connections to France, not just like French Canadian people, like an actual French studio.
Wow,
And
making fun of Quebeckies, huh? You do realize my girlfriend lives in Canada.
okay, is she from Quebec?
No, she's from
Then
Wales.
it doesn't matter then. So heavy metal.
No, it does matter.
Heavy Metal 2000 takes that final short film concept that was played at the end of Heavy Metal of like a fantasy woman fighting off a bunch of lizard people, and it kind of stretches that to an entire feature film. But it has one very, 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 very important aspect, which the first film didn't have, and that is Michael Ironside. Michael Ironside is a serious fucking actor who gives his all for like whatever film he's in, big or small. And he's honestly far too good for a heavy metal film. But because of his presence, he elevates the entire film to have a sense of gravitas that actually grounds all of the nonsense that usually takes place in these films. He's an incredible villain. He's like genuinely kind of scary, and he's having the time of his life. It's great. And even Heavy Metal 2000 did not make anywhere near the money that Heavy Metal did. It was a cash grab as a failed one. The studio basically never made another major film after this. But the swing it took by like expanding that to like feature length, it did allow for more experimentation with the score, because now there was no need to like make very, very specific, like have that huge curated soundtrack that the first Heavy Metal film did. So you didn't need to have like very specific songs for specific short films. You could have the metal songs kind of interplay with the score and cut out and cut in interesting ways. There's more experimentation going on there. Narratively, it's the problem is when you're stretching out like a 10-minute film into 90 minutes. Most of the time, it's 10 minutes for a reason, and it does lose steam at some points. Whenever Michael Ironside's not on screen, you're kind of just like, do I need to see that woman's tits again? Like, is this necessary? And like, it does veer too heavily into exploitation, I think, at some points, because unlike the first Heavy Metal film, it is trying to tell a regular story, and at points it does fail. It's also experimenting with, like, as Melody would know, because most 2000s films try, like most of those 2000 films try to cash in on CGI and like blend that with animation. I think Fantasia 2000 does it quite a bit.
Yeah, but
It does, yeah.
I will say this film, from looking at the soundtrack, I can also see it's cashing in on some bad 2000s metal. Fucking Insane Clown Posse, Machine Head, Hate
Okay.
Department,
The one song that I hate in Sync Posse, the one song they use is actually terrific. I love that song so much.
Monster Magnet, Cold
Yeah.
Chamber, fucking Pantera, I think I saw. Yeah, Pantera. Pantera sucks. Um,
No, but like again, the thing is, the usage of all this music in the film melody is that it's almost like they're scoring different sections of the film, and they're allowing for the traditional orchestral bits to score other sections. Like there is an interplay between the songs. It's not like a continuous wall of noise.
yes, but I will
So
say
yeah,
I can tell you some of these bands are just flat out bad. Like compared to Black Sabbath and Blue Oyster Cult, the only band on here that, well, actually, Queens of the Stone Age was good. It was not anymore, but System of a Down was also when they were active. Um,
yeah.
Also Billy
Again,
Idol.
the Billy Idol song's pretty good as well. Like you're looking at the bands themselves, Maddie. Like the songs they use in the film, they're not too bad. Maybe we should do like a heavy metal 2000 watch along.
No, thank you.
But yeah, so
The only boobs I want to
yeah,
see are my girlfriend's.
okay, fair enough. But yeah, I think the film takes quite a few risks because once again it's a cash grab. People aren't expecting too much of it, but they are allowed to experiment with CGI, and it is experimental. They're not just throwing it on like you'd see a ton of contemporary reviews and say, "Oh, the CGI looks ugly." It does because they didn't have the technology, but they are using it to do very interesting things that they literally couldn't have done with regular animation to show the scale of the space worlds that they were traveling in and stuff like that. I think it is genuinely worth watching. It is not better than the first heavy metal film, but it is quite a bit of fun. It is somewhat in the same vein of like, okay, if you want to just like turn your brain off for a bit, sit back, and like watch some like interesting sci-fi fights with Michael Ironside like growling every 5 minutes. You really can't go wrong with Heavy Metal 2000. And now, for the most controversial of my opinions, The Godfather Part 3. But specifically, The Godfather Part 3, The Death of Michael Corleone, or The Godfather Coda, because it has a million different names, since Francis Ford Coppola keeps making director's cuts of all this stuff. Now, this film was very specifically financed because of Coppola's financial troubles. If anyone's familiar with Patrick Willems, he did a great breakdown of how this film came about. But essentially, Coppola gambled heavily on a film called One from the Heart, in which like he tried to like fund in his own way with American Zoetrope, his own studio. It bombed dramatically, one of the worst flops in Hollywood history, and as a result, he just had to do journeyman kind of film directing roles for the entire 80s period, essentially. And he capped that off with The Godfather Part 3, because that was going to be a good payday for him. He would finally pay off his debts to the studio, and that would have let him do a bigger swings in the future, like Dracula, which is in my personal favorite Coppola film. And so we got The Godfather Part 3. It was actually well received at the time. Obviously, people nowadays see it with like all these shades of, oh, it was a cash grab, etc., etc. But a lot of people did like it at the time. It was nominated for quite a few Oscars, and yeah, it was also very clearly not trying to hit the same beats as Godfather Part 1 and 2. The first half of the film almost feels like an exploitation remix of it, because you have way more killings in the first half than you do in like almost both Godfather films. There's like a trashy undercurrent to it. There's an incest subplot which has become kind of infamous, and like you just have all these elements that are just like, isn't The Godfather meant to be like this very prestigious like study of like trauma and gangster and capitalism and stuff like that? And now it's just become like a bit of a trash heap. But what Coppola does with the second half of the film, and which is why I think it, unlike the other two films which were designed as cash grab sequels, I think you could argue that like Coppola should have made this film anyway. Like it does narratively feed into what parts 1 and 2. Is that halfway through the film, Michael Corleone, played by Al Pacino, obviously the main character of all these films, he goes to Italy, and it recolors not just everything that happened within the film, it also somewhat recontextualizes earlier events in the first two Godfathers, and it becomes more of a reflective film. You have much better performances from like the women characters, and then much better written roles as well, because like, they were mostly sidelined in the first two films. And I do think it's worth seeking out despite its reputation, just because it does function as an interesting coda. It does function as a closing chapter that, like, lest we forget, codas by definition aren't necessary parts to the main piece. Like, the meaning of a coda is something that it's a finale that comments on everything that came before. It's an afterthought. It's an afterword, right? So the story of The Godfather does end with part 2. But what part 3 offers is an interesting reflection of it, and it's also the shortest Godfather film and the most fun-filled one. Whether it's the best Godfather film or anything, I'm not sure if I'm going to be that edgy today and say it's like one of the best films of all time or anything, but I do think it's worth seeking out, and it's legitimized. I think it legitimizes not just its existence. I think it legitimizes the existence of a cash grab sequel, because this is what they can be. They can be retooled as reflections of the very material that they're trying to continue. And yeah, if only other films and franchises learned from Godfather Part 3.
Yeah. I can't really think of too many terrible ones other than the worsts, the cruelest.
Oh, no.
My editing here is bad right now, but hold on a second. I really should have prepared for this.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is what it takes to make a podcast. We're showing you all the nitty-gritty. We're not cutting around anything. Although we probably could if we wanted to.
Have you ever heard of Pacific Rim Uprising? I hope you haven't.
You know,
it's a bad
unfortunately,
movie.
not only have I heard of it, I watched it opening day.
You watched it opening day, you poor bastard.
Opening day, yeah.
You poor bastard. So, we're not going to be talking about Pacific Rim Uprising, though, because it is a bad movie, and that has already been well established by the fact that I just said it is a bad movie.
This is true.
The original Pacific Rim, though, is fucking amazing. This is an incredible movie.
And interesting enough, this connects in more ways than one to the idea of a cash grab sequel, because obviously Uprising was that. Del Toro was barely involved with Pacific Rim Uprising. It was just made to like capitalize on the name, and it did so poorly that like it didn't even do that. I think like they scrapped plans of the third one afterwards. But
Yeah, that's the thing. The interesting thing about Uprising is the fact that even in spite of losing Del Toro, it has a ton of amazing ideas and then does nothing with them. Oh,
yeah,
it has
yeah.
evil Jaegers. Oh, there are 3 kaijus who morph into one. Oh, one of the comedic comedic relief
Side
characters.
relief, yeah.
One of the comedic
That was
relief characters.
so good, yeah. That one, but like they handle it so badly.
They have so many amazing ideas in this movie, and then all of
Yeah.
them are just fucking terrible to actually see. Spoiler alert, they kill off the best character from Pacific Rim 1 for no reason, Mako
For no
Mori.
reason.
Literally
Oh,
no
God.
reason. To set up a murder mystery, which is, I wonder who killed Mako Mori. Was it the evil corporation she just voted to screw over 5 minutes ago?
Oh,
We will now wait 40 minutes to tell you that, yes, in fact,
yeah,
it was the evil corporation she voted to screw over about 5 minutes before then, and who would have had the resources to kill her in the way that they did.
yeah.
Amazing.
I mean,
It's almost like they had a motive.
I'm going to be a bit controversial again. I think Pacific Rim Uprising has more interesting ideas than the original Pacific Rim does. Again, I think it's reaching further. It never grasps any of it, but like it is reaching like a bit higher than what Del Toro was doing in Pacific Rim.
I don't think that's fair though, because Pacific Rim 1 was setting the stage for that kind of stuff. And also, like, a lot of the ideas in it were interesting, were like trailblazing and controversial at the time it released. The idea of oh, let's have a mecha series where it's focused on like a fucking global collaboration. Everyone has to work together. You have like everyone from Russia and Tokyo, and I just said Russia, a country, and then Tokyo, a city. Amazing.
There you go.
I don't even know if fucking any of this shit besides the fight is in Tokyo. Point being said, and also having that being connected with the Jaegers being the pilots fusing their minds together, literally having to collaborate on a fundamental level to where they're sharing mind space together. Like, everything about Pacific Rim is so, like, it's setting the stage also. Like, the idea of, oh, they've gotten so used to the kaijus that, like, they've become basically, like, TV show characters and shit. Like, Pacific Rim, the reason why Pacific Rim doesn't feel as cutting edge right now, story-wise, is because a bunch of other stuff since then has been inspired by it. And also...
yeah, but what I do want to add, though, is that Del Toro is meditating on the kaiju films that he grew up on. And, like, the mecha anime that he loves. But, like, yeah, the reason why it's not as cutting edge is because, to an extent, I don't want to say it, but, like, was it ever that cutting edge? I think a lot of what Pacific Rim is radicalism, like that it brought, was I think in its design and its music,
its themes also, though.
Okay,
it's
maybe
it's very well tied together.
Independent. Okay, compare it to Independence Day, right? Independence Day also had, an entire global defense force against aliens, and then like.
Yeah, but it was very focused on America, though. America. It wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't like that. Wasn't the whole idea of it. Independence Day is literally named Independence Day.
Yeah, but isn't the whole idea of Pacific Rim though that's the question. Like, is Pacific Rim about like a global defense team, or is it about trauma?
Yes.
Is it about
It's about
the
a lot of things.
generational thing? Yeah.
But I would say first and foremost, because like literally like the whole thing is let's all fucking fight together for the common good. Like that's the whole like core theme of it.
Mm-hmm.
And let's do that by building mechs and shit together and then going and fucking punching shit. And then stabbing it with chain swords.
While like Tom Morello plays on the electric guitar part, it is a great movie. Like,
it is it is I would say the best like Hollywood blockbuster movie of the 2010s.
I mean, Batman v Superman released in that same decade, but alright, sure, whatever.
So, Dan hasn't responded to that comment from me. I don't know if he ever will. Like it's actually like a phenomenal film. Like it has gorge. It looks amazing. Like CGI has never felt as tactile as it does in Pacific Rim. Like the goop of the.
I will say, I think a lot of the legendary MonsterVerse, like the way they approach CGI, I think it is taken a lot from Pacific Rim. The way they keep grounding the monster in like tactility and stuff like that.
Like it just looks. You could feasibly kind of trick someone into thinking there's like a wet puppet behind some of these like kaijus. Like
again, like it's further going into like how Del Toro wanted to make it like the kaiju films of his time, right? Like he wanted to give it that Sumation feel.
Yeah, and I will also add like the imagery of like the Jaeger like falling onto like the tundra and shit.
Yeah.
Like down on its knee, it's fucking lost its arm. I'm not gonna say the name of the of the Jaeger in this case because it does sound like a racial slur.
Yeah.
But like also like the kaiju like jumping out, it's phenomenal. Like and then you cut into like inside the Jaegers and you have to see like the Jaeger pilots like working together and shit to do anything. Or when they fucking grab the goddamn carrier ship and then fucking use it as a bat. Amazing.
Oh, like, that's so good.
Like
for me, it's not even that. It's that the one shot of Mariko. That's her name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mako Mori, actually.
Yeah. Her opening shot, the way like it's completely like drenched in rain and she just like lifts her umbrella up and the helicopter comes down. Like I know that's like a very weird thing to single out, but like it just shows the level of intent in even the frames when there aren't any monsters punching each other. Like it's made by people who care about what they're doing.
Yeah, unlike Pacific Rim Uprising, which feels like they looked at all of the stuff that Pacific Rim 1 did well and were like, what if we did a bunch, like what if we introduced a bunch of cool ideas and then did nothing with them and then also shat all over all the good shit from the first one. The action scenes are terrible. Like
oh, they're pretty bad, yeah.
Like Pacific Rim 1, you can see the shit that the mechs are doing. This should be the bare minimum for like a competent action movie, but not for Pacific Rim Uprising because you can't fucking see the shit. There's no there's no geography to the scenes. You never know where one Jaeger is and one kaiju is relative to another. It's just like fucking horrible to watch. It's borderline unwatchable. And then you also have like Pacific Rim 1 at the time it came out, there was like not a controversy about it, but a bunch of people being like, hey, this movie fails the Bechdel test. Do we actually care that it fails the Bechdel test? Like, people were...
Oh, I mean, like, Malcolm Murray is the most interesting character in the film. Like, she's doing most of the heavy lifting.
Yeah, people were like,
Yeah.
she's actually an interesting character, like, in the way that she's not even, like, sexualized. When she is thinking sexually, it's from her perspective. Like, and people were having, like, you were having growth from pop feminism being like, this fucking joke Alison Bechdel and her friends came up with and then put into fucking her comic decades ago is not actually, and was just a joke. It wasn't, like, meant to be some cornerstone.
We could do an hour about, like, how we as society have failed to understand the Bechdel test and, like, feminism in general.
But I'm
also,
trying. I do have the point.
Like,
I'm just saying as an aside. The Bechdel test, like, people were just, like, not fucking understanding that it wasn't supposed to be a cornerstone of feminist theory. It was just a joke about how the girlfriends then went and watched Alien at the movie theater. That was it. They weren't, like, fucking trying to be like, oh, any movie that fails this is fucking anti-feminist, misogynist garbage. No, they were making a joke about, hey, the last movie I got to watch was Alien. Because they talked about the alien. You know, it's just
also,
like...
Alien passes the Bechdel test.
that's what I'm saying. That was the joke. The last thing that they could watch was, based on the made-up test in the comic, was Alien.
I see.
But it was just, like, the Bechdel test is a funny joke in that comic, and then got ballooned into this, like, pop feminism, like, oh, any movie that fails this is bad. And it's like, no, that wasn't the point. Stop taking... And then also doing, like, racist and homophobic shit and being like, oh, this movie about gay Asian guys that fails the Bechdel test? Oh, it's fucking anti-feminist. Yeah. Because it's focused on the experience of gay Asian men. No, it isn't. Alison Bechdel literally fucking went and was like, no!
Like...
Stop it. Stop doing stupid shit with the Bechdel test. Anyways, people were like...
Yeah.
And it was like, we understand now that the Bechdel test doesn't have to be passed for the movie to be feminist. And then Pacific Rim Uprising must have looked at that and were like, oh, you praised Pacific Rim because Meiko Mori was an interesting character who, like, even if the movie didn't pass the Bechdel test, had her own fucking shit beyond her interest in men. And then they were like, what if we had the world's worst romantic triangle?
Oh god. Yeah, I still remember. I barely remember the film. I still remember was it like Patrick Eastwood, John Boyega, and that, like, random other girl or something?
Yeah, it was John Boyega and Scott Eastwood, I believe.
Oh, yeah, Scott Eastwood, not Patrick. Is there a Patrick Eastwood?
Who knows? Scott Eastwood is such a forgettable person who has no stage presence whatsoever that you could just call him whatever. You could call him, like, Pumpernickel, and it would be just as valid. People know who you're talking about. Oh, that fucking Pumpernickel. Like, John Boyega is he has screen presence.
Boyega's great, yeah.
He's not amazing in the movie, because he basically, every scene he's in, he's like, you can feel...
I think he's the best part of the film. He's the one who's trying. He's the one who's reaching,
You can feel that the fact that he is not trying as hard as he could be, and he's just like, oh, this movie's bad. Like, you can feel that energy
Yeah,
to him.
well,
Um,
I think he's kind of Ironsiding it. Like going back to Heavy Metal 2008, I think he has enough like presence to know he's the best part of the film. So he's kind of hamming it up. He's not going for the emotions, but he's going for like the star things to do, like the funny. And
I will
that's the way I remember it. Yeah,
I will say
like
also,
I'm not rewatching the film again to check. You know.
I would never wish that upon any soul to watch Pacific Rim Uprising. But yeah, they have John Boyega, boring white toast the man, and then random woman who doesn't have any personality. And it's like, good
Okay.
job, you did the misogyny that people were making fun of with, or that people overcorrected, and then we're like, oh, the Bechdel test must suddenly be the only fucking mantra that we go by
Yeah.
forever in terms of
I
if
mean, the
something
thing
is.
is, Kaylee Spade's actually a great actress. Like, have you seen her in Priscilla? She is actually really
No,
good. But like,
I don't watch movies. I've never watched a film in my life.
this is true.
Um, Pacific Rim Uprising is just fucking bad. Like, and the thing is like
Yeah.
the ending of it, where it's like setting up Star Trek but with Pacific Rim, is like amazing. I would love to watch that.
Yeah.
But I would not want to watch it if it was like, if it came out like Pacific Rim Uprising. If it came out like Pacific Rim but in space, with them fucking setting up like a galactic federation and shit, amazing. I would love to see that. Voltron but Pacific Rim? Yes. Uh, but they didn't do that. And also the movie is just, it poses too many questions, or it poses too many good ideas to have none of them turn out good. Like,
Yeah.
it makes it
Yeah.
a frustrating watch. Like, it
I
having
agree with that.
it having like 10 amazing ideas is worse than it having no ideas, because I want to see the good ideas executed more, like,
Yeah,
better.
I feel that a lot with a lot of films actually. Like there's this revenge film called Defiance, right? And unlike most revenge films, like there's an actual sense of character, and like the people talk to each other, and like there's a very big sense of community. So like when villains come to take over, it feels quite sad, right? The problem is the film ends with like the most boring action beats possible, and it goes on for like 10 minutes too long, and by the end you're just like, okay, so we had all of this great build up and that was the result, and like Pacific Rim Uprising is kind of like 5 of them. Because you have all these different threats and like none of them go anywhere, and if they do go anywhere they take the worst path possible.
It's just like, oh my god, this, like, Pacific Rim deserved better. It deserved a good film to follow it up. And the thing is like, it should also have good comics and shit. I haven't actually read any of them, so I'm not gonna comment on them. But like, Pacific Rim is interesting enough to, support having a fuck ton of like expansion, because the world was actually interesting, the vibes of it were
Yeah.
unique. I don't like everything being franchised shit, and I would have been happy with Pacific Rim just being a standalone thing. But if anything deserved to have a good franchise built around it, Pacific Rim was it, because it had shit to build it on top of. It had a good foundation. And then they were like, let's burn that to the ground and then fucking rebuild it on fucking rickety supports. And it's like, no shit, that failed. People don't want to watch bad movies. based on good movies. Shocker.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, a big thing with the cash grab sequels I mentioned, next to none of them were financial hits. George Lucas still feels bad that More American Graffiti made next to no money. Heavy Metal 2000 tanked the animation studio that made it. Godfather Part 3 made money, but like was considered for a while to be a much lesser film than the other two Godfather films. Yeah, so like if you make a film for the sole purpose of like cashing in on something, chances are you are not gonna make that money back.
Now, if you had a good movie behind that, if you were like, oh, I don't care what comes out of this as long as it's a good movie, because then I'll make money off of the franchise being built, then yeah, you will probably. But they didn't do that. They were just like, let's make something bad. I mean, obviously no one sat down and was like, let's make a bad film. But they didn't really care about it being good. There was no quality control there being like, we need to stop this from being as bad as it is. Anyways.
Anyways. So, from movies to video games, there's a video game that I heard a lot about last year and did not play at all. Melody has played it and has thoughts. What is this video game?
Yes. I'm so glad you took from my topic and then went to another one of my topics instead of going to your next one. So
your topic segues better tonally, but yeah.
False. Anyways, Slay the Princess, which is a fucking gorgeous goddamn visual novel, a horror visual novel. It is gorgeous, it is phenomenally written, the voice acting is tremendous, and it has a lot of Stanley Parable vibes to it, of, you know, being defiant towards the narrator's whims and whatnot.
Yeah.
It is...
Can you speak more about like the horror themes about it? Because from what I heard, it is more of a metatextual exploration. It kind of linking back to what we talked about with Once and Future. It's a metaphorical like story about, not metaphorical, but like metatextual exploration of the idea of saving the damsel in distress and like twisting that in some way. But
so,
yeah, can you speak more about that?
So I would say that it is not like Once and Future in terms of the meta-narrative of it. This is absolutely like things, time loops, everything going wrong, body horror in terms of how the characters morph and change, things that you don't understand, mirrors appearing and disappearing over different loops, and never being explained why.
Mm-hmm.
The narrator rejecting, oh, you just made that up. There was never a mirror here before.
Is the narrator just gaslighting you throughout the playthrough?
Is he? Is fucking stairways into nothingness, infinite stairways, I should say, spiraling into voids.
Oh, so it's like Super Mario 64. There you go.
It is absolutely a trip. It is fantastic. I very much love it. And it is fully voice acted by Jonathan Sims and Nicole Goodnight. Bleh. All of the art is by Abby Howard, who is a comic artist.
Okay. What she worked on, comic-wise?
Uh, don't know. She's gotten in Ignats though. Let me see. Abby Howard Comics. She has worked on Scarlet Hollow, which is a video game. The Last Halloween, Unhealthy, Earth Before Us, Mammoth Takeover, Junior Scientist Power Hour, Earth Before Us, Dinosaur. Oh, Earth Before Us is a series. The Crossroads at Midnight.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on her portfolio page right now, scrolling through it for the dear viewers. Yeah, Abby Howard, cool artist. So, yeah. Slay the
Okay,
Princess,
cool.
good video game.
Yeah. And speaking going from good video game to good music, it is Low Roar. And now this is a bit different from some of the other bits that we've done on Sorta, where we're not going through like a specific bit of art. We're talking about a musician's career, because Low Roar was
Discography.
the brainchild. Yeah, discography. There you go. That's the word. So Low Roar was the brainchild of Ryan Karazija, an American immigrant from Iceland, and what made him popular, or what made Low Roar popular, was the usage of their music by Kojima in Death Stranding. He used it very extensively in the promotional material, and it features quite heavily in the video game itself, including the opening titles is from the third studio album. And that's how I came across the band, and over the years I started to grow quite fond of them, listened to a lot of their music, and that all came to a bit of a tragic end in 2022 when Ryan Karazija passed away at a very young age due to complications with pneumonia. And I just wanted to like briefly talk about their 5 albums, because what I think Ryan and the rest of Low Roar did is start off with a very interesting like indie sound with the first self-titled album, Low Roar, and gradually progress into something quite experimental and unique. And I think it would have been quite interesting to see where they would have gone had tragedy not struck. So with the first album, that didn't really put them on the map. But like Ryan has gone on to say in interviews that they weren't commercially successful at all until Kojima like found them, discovered them in like a record store in Iceland. But what they did initially was pretty much a variant on like European post rock, which was quite a big scene at the time, and still is. It's a growing scene, and it's quite easy listening music. It's very pleasant. It has like some incredible songwriting from Ryan, and this is the first thing that strikes you, and it's something that he's continued throughout all 5 of his albums. Like the way he weaves together stories through images, it feels very cinematic. You can kind of see why Kojima gravitated towards it, and it's why the music's still very popular in usage for trailers and promotional material for like films and that kind of thing, because of the way Ryan paints like with the lyrics. He uses the lyrics to have very specific images that have very quite obvious meanings, but he constructs this tapestry throughout the entire song. They don't necessarily tell a story in the same sense of like constructing an atmosphere. And so he does that through the first album, Low Roar, which is the most conventional of the 5 albums. even with his songwriting style, he's still telling somewhat traditional song narratives, and that continues through Zero, which is the second album, but it has some more experimental odes. There are some tracks which are like only a minute long. There are a few tracks which are very harsh electronics, and now you get some songs which are just purely vignette based, which will be somewhat par for the course throughout the rest of his discography. Once in a Long Long While is the album that Death Stranding, the video game, draws from most heavily. It features the song Don't Be So Serious, which is the opening title song for Death Stranding, and a lot of its songs are to do with romance and breakups and the conflicting emotions that those events elicit. They're told in the same kind of elliptical way that Lorov kind of made their trade. And weirdly enough, I'd say Once in a Long Long While has the least experimentation of all 5 albums, because they've kind of refined their sound to such a point that they can make 13 songs using very, very similar, like a sonic palette, if you will. And it's quite interesting to just hear them like refine that completely and make one polished album with that those tools. Low Raw was a somewhat fully formed band with the first studio album, the self-titled Low Raw, but with Once in a Long Long While you get a complete evolution of that. So the final 2 albums are Ross and Maybe Tomorrow, and this is where you get the electronic side taking over, and this is what I would have been very interested to hear where this experimentation led to. Because while the first few tracks of Ross start almost like a sequel to Once in a Long Long While, a bit more upbeat, but using the same kind of instrumentation, the same kind of storytelling through the songs, it eventually goes into long instrumentals between like few short phrases. The song "I'll Make You Feel," which I think was also featured in, it wasn't featured in Death Stranding, but it was featured in promotional materials for other games and films, if I remember correctly. And it had a very big driving motion to it, which, again, I think is what makes this music so outstanding. So it makes it so cinematic. It feels so emotional because of just like how he keeps painting with very, very simple crescendos and like images and vignettes. And Maybe Tomorrow is the combination of this. It's full on experimentation. There are very few traditional songs, if any, on the album. Most of them have very long instrumentals, but like with plenty of electronics. And the only singles from the album are barely songs at all. They have like verses and choruses and all that, but they are actually mostly instrumental. They have to be cut down for radio telecast. There's a lot more profanity in these songs, which obviously, like, profanity in songs is nothing new, but Low Roll usually stay away from them, and when they are employed, they're not employed for shock value. They just flow as off a piece. The first 2 songs here, the first 3 songs, I think, have quite explicit lyrics in terms of, just using the F word or something like that. So, like, straight away you kind of get the feeling that they're not really crafting these individual songs like they used to. They're trying to craft these atmospheres. They're trying to craft these, like, emotional roller coasters. And I think that was really interesting, and I really liked the experimentation that Loro brought, and it was a joy to just, like, go through the discography, and it was quite sad when Ryan passed away.
So, do you have any songs that you think would be a good, like, excerpt for, so that people can get a feel for them?
Yeah, I would say, um, Once in a Long Long While from the album, the Once in a Long Long While is quite an upbeat version of the electronic experimentation that they'd later do, which they'd most of their songs are drowned in melancholy, but Once in a Long Long While is this very specific kind of upbeat version of optimism. Like, as the title suggests, it's like, okay, yeah, like, okay, maybe life is a bit bad, but once in a while you do get a break. Once in a while something good does happen. And so they're using the electronic soundscape that they're still developing with this album and trying to give you something more optimistic.
Alright, so I'm just pulling that up right now. And
yeah, we're not gonna get like killed for copyright, are we?
I'm just gonna play it for like 10 seconds. So
Okay.
no. There may be a claim, but we can't monetize these anyways, so
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, have I interested you in listening to any of it, Melody?
at some point potentially.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay.
Have you played Death Stranding before?
No. I own it from Epic, but I haven't played it.
Is it? Yeah. Death Stranding itself is quite an interesting game. I'm not sure if I mentioned this on Sorta before, but it's the only game that made me consider game design as a profession because of just how how mad Kojima must have been to like try and reinvent like the AAA motion mechanics for the video game. But yeah, I think Ryan's music, Laurel's music really contributed to that soundscape, and listening to their discography on its own was a joy.
Okay.
It's incredible.
Um, so, let's stop talking for like about 10 seconds or so, and then we'll play an excerpt.
Yeah, right?
Alright. And yeah, so if that sounds like something you want to check out more, dear viewers, uh, doesn't seem they're on Bandcamp, um, but seems they may be on streaming.
They are on streaming, and I think can't remember the record label that distributes them, but they have like a specific like vinyl collection that you can pursue if that's what you're interested in.
Yeah. So, yeah. Do you have any other things you want to say regarding Little Roar?
No, I think they're a brilliant band. My personal favorite album of theirs would be Once in a Long Long While. I am a bit of a simple person when it comes to music. I do like when a band kind of perfects a sound, but maybe Tomorrow is the most interesting album.
Okay. But yeah, maybe next time I will recommend something a little more hard-toothed, but yeah, check that out on episode 28, which will come out tomorrow, as these do come out on a daily basis. Except for this episode, because this one has been terrible. We talked for way too much about Pacific Rim Uprising.
This is true.
We must downsize on the Pacific Rim Uprising in future.
I mean, the less people hear about this movie, the better. It's should we even release the episode at this point?
No, we should not. Death to Pacific Rim Uprising.